All right, everybody. Let's see. That appears to be working. If you tuned in yesterday, and again, I have the light on my face once again, so we're gonna just deal with that. It'll be okay. I probably should have fixed that as well. But if you tuned in yesterday, we had some technical difficulties. Today, we should not have technical difficulties. That is the hope, at least. But again, let me know where you're watching from, everybody. Love to engage with y'all, and it's also going to make me or allow the stream to function a little bit better if I know where everyone is watching from. Got someone from North Georgia. Thank you for tuning in, Scott. Appreciate it. CJ, always good to hear from you out of the Midlands of South Carolina. Tampa, Florida. Watching from Abbeville, South Carolina. There in the upstate. Awesome. My kind of home area there. Volume is low. Okay, I can try to turn that up for you. And again, anything like that, let me know and I can fix it. Let me also put that on the right screen so you can actually see the right stuff. Sorry. All right. Watching from Michigan, New York City area. Awesome, Peter. Thank you for tuning in. And again, if there is anything like a low volume or something, let me know and I can try to get that sorted out properly. In fact, here is a good way to fix that. All right, volume should be a little bit better now. We'll see. All right, we are going to start at about 6:50 is whenever we'll start with the actual forecasting part of this, everybody. So, just know that. Alrighty. There was something else I was going to do. What is that? Okay, cool. That looks good. All right, awesome. Again, thank you for joining me, everybody. Again, got some people watching from the southeast, a good amount here, which is kind of what I would expect here, given generally what we're forecasting, which is obviously some tropical trouble with the southeast and its sites there. So again, a nice little plethora of viewers here, and I do appreciate again all of you tuning in on the first day of August. Let me know also how your first day of August went. Personally, I didn't do all that much. I know a lot of people went back to school today. My sister back home, she went in for her first day today, which is kind of crazy to think August is the first day of school. At least to me, that sounds kind of crazy early. But let me know again if you had anything exciting like that going on. And again, just going to wait a couple more minutes here for about 6:50, 6:51, 6:52-ish. And then we'll start actually breaking down that forecast for you. And again, it's a complicated one. There's a lot that we're going to need to discuss here. And kind of a lot of different moving variables here with this overall setup that we're dealing with here. Yeah, 2024 is going by fast, Sam. I agree. It feels like it was just January. What it really feels like is it was just May. The past month or two, this summer specifically, has gone by crazy fast for me, at least. Which, I guess that normally happens when you're in college. It goes by pretty quickly because unfortunately, you blink and next thing you know, you're back to the textbooks. So, all right, cool. Again, got about 32 people in here. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Just going to give it another minute or two, and then we will get going. I do have my Earl Grey tea today, which is now a new staple for me. I don't know why. It's just something I've decided from now on. Earl Grey tea is going to be the way to go for these sorts of streams. Yeah, again, just kind of what we're gonna do here. Let me know if you have a favorite beverage to go to when you're kind of watching something on YouTube. Obviously, I'm not watching; I'm recording, but same general principle here. That's awesome. You're in high school, Sam. You plan on going into meteorology, or got some other kind of thing with your eyes set on? Water, yeah, CJ, that's a go-to as well. In fact, I have water. You know what? I'm gonna stand up really quickly and grab my water actually, just because I'm gonna need that eventually. All right. See, I also have water. Don't worry. Although should have probably filled it up more ahead of time, but that's okay. We'll make do. Alrighty, everyone. Well, again, welcome in. We will go ahead and start talking about what is likely to be future tropical storm Debby. In fact, I wouldn't rule out possible Hurricane Debby with impact starting soon. And in fact, before we even look at satellite, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. We do have new state of emergencies put into effect for much of Florida. So if you're watching from Florida, let me know. Let me know if you're in one of these counties. But again, much of the state from the West Coast up through the Panhandle and even up into Northeast Florida now under a state of emergency there issued for impacts that are going to happen here from current Invest 97L, again, likely to become Debby this weekend. But again, Monroe County up through the West Coast, Collier County, Lee County, which, fun fact, is my technical hometown from Fort Myers originally. So if we have anyone watching from Fort Myers, definitely let me know. But then up the West Coast through Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, and even up into the Orlando area. Again, the Panhandle up through Tallahassee, through the Big Bend, Dixie County, Taylor County, and then Duval County as well. So you folks in Jacksonville also not out of the woods here, as this is likely to kind of bring some of those impacts for much of the state. And it's going to be different types of impacts for different types of people, but I can guarantee you just about everyone in the state of Florida is going to see at least some rainfall, and a lot of it, unfortunately. And again, we're kind of monitoring the potential for this storm to stall out somewhere, and that's going to really not help with the rainfall potential. Now, it may not stall out over Florida. Some of the models today have been a little bit quicker with motion over Florida, some of them now stalling it off the Carolina coastline. But I think nonetheless, we're going to have a period here with this storm system of at least a couple of days that it doesn't move all that much. And again, that could be over land, that could be on the Atlantic Ocean, that could be in the Gulf of Mexico. But just know that is going to be something we need to watch out for sure. All right, so with all that said, let's go ahead and start looking into the specifics now of kind of what we're seeing right now on satellite and what we're going to see here throughout the next couple of days. Now, I'm going to go ahead and circle our general area of interest. I'm going to zoom in on this in just a second, so don't worry. We're going to take a more in-depth look. But this big area of showers and storms that you're seeing kind of over Hispaniola and just north of there, that is what is designated as Invest 97L by the National Hurricane Center currently. Again, it's going to bring some impact. So 97L kind of started way back here in the Atlantic as an upper level low. That kind of picked up a tropical wave down here and eventually kind of brought it all together here near the Antilles. Now, the past couple of days or the past day or two, this has continued to track towards the west, west-northwest specifically, and again, now in this area. It's going to continue that same track and eventually end up somewhere in here over Cuba, whether that's on the north side of Cuba, right over the island, or a little bit south of there is yet to be seen and is going to be huge in where this system eventually goes. But just know it's going to be somewhere in that general area here eventually. So again, that's the general track. If we zoom in on this wave a little bit more in depth here and kind of take a look at the overall, look at the storm system itself. Right now, again, it's just kind of a disorganized mess. Now, we do have plenty of convection. You'll notice specifically some flaring up of convection here over Haiti. Also, to the north of there, we've got some convection firing up. You can also note generally how the flow is around this system. So it's not, a perfect wave right now. We don't have a defined center of low pressure yet at the surface, but it's getting that look. It's more organized than it was the day or yesterday. It's well more organized than it was 3 or 4 days ago. So it's on this slow progression, and really from now on out, the ingredients for this system are going to be more favorable for development, especially once it gets towards Cuba and eventually, definitely once it sneaks its way likely into the Gulf of Mexico here going into this weekend for sure. All right, I'm going to read some comments here real quick and then get back to talking here. Just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody or anything here. Bonnie likes to drink iced tea. Iced tea is good too, for sure. Got some watching from Indiana. Yeah, Indiana, it has been hot. It has been stormy up that way. Luckily, not too much of a tropical threat there, especially not with this one. I think we had some impacts there with Beryl, at least in terms of rainfall, but this one doesn't really look to be your problem. Lots of storms in Kentucky today. Kentucky's another one of those states that have been getting it good for sure the past couple of days. And again, it's that ring of fire effect I've been telling you about in the morning videos. And again, it's just kind of continued here. So again, ring of fire effect definitely still ongoing, and bringing those storms with them. All right, cool. So let's continue kind of trucking on here, and we'll start here. I say start, we've already started, obviously, but we will continue here by looking at the latest from the National Hurricane Center. And if you're watching this stream after the fact, this has been updated, but this is the latest update I have while doing this live right now. But we are up to a 70% chance of development here from the National Hurricane Center within the next 7 days, 30% now within the next 48 hours. Yesterday, we were at 0 for the next 48 hours and 60 for the next 7 days. So confidence has increased. Also, what has increased is the confidence that this is going to be in the Gulf, one way, shape, or form. In fact, development chances aren't even over the Atlantic anymore, albeit the Gulf is a part of the Atlantic, but still, you get the idea here. The west coast of Florida is where development is likely going to happen. Again, National Hurricane Center now saying it's likely that this forms into at least a tropical depression, but likely a tropical storm and potentially even a hurricane as well. Definitely in the cards here with this system going ahead of time. And when I say hurricane, that could happen in a couple different ways in a couple different places. This could become a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico and then strike Florida, or it may wait and then get over Florida back into the Atlantic and then become a hurricane there. That is also a possibility here, but just know, again, we've got some different possibilities with this one. So again, that's the latest from the NHC. Now, before we dive into any specific model guidance and kind of those fantasy runs, if you will, I want to go ahead and set the stage for you and tell you why this is such a difficult forecast with, again, what would likely be Debby here, and kind of just run you through some of the steering currents here, and also the fact that, again, we don't know exactly where the center of this storm even really is yet. Sure, we've got the idea. We just saw the wave on satellite, but is the center further to the north with that convection up over the Atlantic? Is it right over Haiti currently? Is it even potentially a little south of there? And that, again, is going to pay massive dividends later on in that forecast on where it goes, as that'll really determine where the steering currents are. So this map I'm showing you right now, credit to tropicaltidbits.com. I'll give them a little plug here, run by Levi Cohen, I believe is how you say his last name. It might be Cowan, but either way, Levi, really smart guy, has a PhD in meteorology and specializes in hurricanes, and he runs this entire website. So again, a shout out to him. He also has a YouTube channel called actually, I think it's just his name, but either way, you can look it up on YouTube. You can just look up Tropical Tidbits, and I'm sure it'll pop up. So check him out for sure. He's a really smart guy. And has done a lot of time and sacrificed a lot for the field in studying this and giving us these sorts of resources. So again, this map shows a couple things. Kind of the brighter colors you're seeing here, and I'll just circle here. This is vorticity at 850 millibars in the atmosphere, or just kind of in the lower levels. Not quite at the surface, but just above the surface here. This is where we're seeing spin, which obviously would indicate some sort of tropical storm developing while over water, at least. Now, these lines that you see, these kind of blue lines that I'll kind of trace a little bit here, these are our 500 millibar height anomalies, and I show this all the time in my videos. Again, just kind of shows where we're seeing certain type of divergence or convergence aloft. And then the arrows you see here are the wind barbs. Those are winds at 200 millibars or high up where the jet stream is. So all of this is going to be important, but the thing to really focus on is these brighter colors and where you're seeing them. And this is our latest run of the GFS model, and I do mean latest, just from this evening, just ran not even 30 minutes ago probably. And notice where it's initializing this vorticity at 850 millibars, right here near the northern end of Hispaniola. And as I move this ahead into time, you'll notice it compacts pretty easily, moves right over Cuba, and then eventually, Saturday morning and afternoon, that vorticity is over the Gulf of Mexico with no more friction interaction from land, and thus nothing really to slow it down here. So again, this is the latest GFS, and this is why the GFS is showing a bit of a different solution than the European, and I'll show you the European on the same map in just a second, but notice where that vorticity goes within just the next 48 hours. This is Saturday afternoon and evening. We're on Thursday afternoon and evening right now. So again, just bump this ahead 24, 48 hours and look at where we're at. We've got this, again, well-defined vorticity at 850 millibars. And if we switch this to the European model, during the same time frame currently, again, you'll notice here that we're seeing a little bit of less of that general consensus. Sorry, give me 1 second. Looks like getting a little choppy again. Should be able to buffer itself out here. Let's see. All right. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, I'm not sure what the problem has been with YouTube. It's not. I don't think it's a recording software, but we will allow it to keep going here and see what happens. In fact, actually, I think it might just be the webcam that's a little choppy right now. So sorry about that if I look a little choppy. The map should be fine though. So in fact, I'll even turn off the webcam for a second here, just so it's not quite as annoying for you to have to look at. Okay, sure. That should fix that problem. I think the webcam is probably on the last leg of its battery here. So again, sorry about that. Anyway, back to the actual forecasting side of things here. Again, we're watching this tropical wave here, and with the European model, it forms a little bit differently, or the center of it kind of gets going a little bit differently here, and that is something that is causing big differences on down the road. So again, if I go to the same time frame here, Saturday morning and afternoon, the European model looks much different than the GFS did. You'll notice we have more of an elongated low pressure here that is making it a little bit more difficult for the model to kind of pick up on a specific low. So if I go back to the GFS for the same time frame, this is Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon here. Here's the GFS and here's the European. And you'll notice those distinct differences between the two are, again, causing big differences on down the road in exactly what happens here with the evolution of this system. So because the GFS develops this a little bit sooner here, and closes that low off quicker, it allows it to, one, strengthen quicker, also kind of pulls it north a little bit quicker compared to the European, which is, again, a little bit more elongated with that area of low pressure, and thus brings a kind of a different track and different strength and intensity as well. So that's kind of one of the big differences that we're seeing here between the two, and again, that is causing big problems on down the road. All right, next thing I will show you here is some spaghetti models, and before I do that, just give me 1 second. I'm going to mute myself and all right, sorry about that, folks. I am back. Also, let me see if the webcam is working properly. Looks like I'm still frozen in time there, so that'll be okay. We'll try to go without it here. But again, if we take a look at the latest run from our spaghetti models, and again, this is kind of new here, so this is, since this was just designated as an invest recently, this is coming out a little bit. Again, kind of off of newer data. So that is definitely good. Now, we should get new runs of these relatively soon, probably within the next 2 hours or so. But if we just start by looking at general intensity here for this potential system, you will note that some of the models show different kind of solutions here. And that is going to be something that we have to watch for sure. In fact, I think that, okay, I'm back. There we go. Sorry about that. Sorry, that was going to bug me, but I think we're fixed now. So back to this though, and I'll stop sounding like I don't know what I'm talking about. So the intensity models here at Latest Spaghetti, again from this afternoon, we have a couple different ssolutions happening. And in fact, I'm going to switch it up on us here and show us these first. So these are the latest spaghetti plots for where the system is going to go. Again, this is from this afternoon, so we'll get new ones this evening, but you'll notice we have a general consensus from all of them that this is going to get into the Gulf of Mexico, and then most of them slowly hook this off towards the east and towards the north. So that is going to be pretty important here in the impacts that we see in portions of the southeast. But another thing I want you to know is see how different they are in where they initialize this over Cuba, and thus how different they are in where we get landfall. The models that initialize this further towards the Keys obviously bring this quicker and closer up towards Tampa. The models that initialize this further towards the tip of Cuba bring this up towards the Panhandle and closer towards Panama City Beach and Destin and those areas. So again, I've said this many times the past couple of days, and I'll continue to say it, until we get a center of low pressure that finally forms at the surface, we're going to have trouble tracking where this is going to hit, per se, in Florida, even if the entire state likely is going to see impacts in one way, shape, or form. Now, getting back to the intensity side of things, you will notice here, again, we're seeing different solutions with different models. Some of them keep it weak here in the Gulf, like the European kind of struggling to develop that center, and again, thus keeping it from rapidly intensifying. Some of the models are more on the GFS side of things and say, no, this is going to develop that center of low pressure pretty quickly, and thus has the chance to intensify rather quickly. Now, either way, most of the models get this into tropical storm strength eventually, whether that be after it passes over Florida and gets into the Atlantic or kind of hits Florida, then loops back into the Gulf, is different for each model. But just about all the models say that this will likely become Debby at some point in the next week or so. All right, with that said, now that we have things functioning again and I'm back and you can hear me and we've looked at that, we will now take a look at some models in depth here. So we'll start with the GFS, and again, I will start this by saying every model is going to start Saturday morning, and what I want you to focus on with all of this, whenever starting these, is where they kind of, how strong they are initially and where exactly that low pressure is. Again, GFS is a little bit stronger. It kind of creates that vorticity a little bit quicker over Cuba. Some of them will be a little weaker and some of them will be displaced a little, and thus, again, that'll have big impacts on exactly where these are going to go. So we'll move this ahead into time a little bit. GFS, again, this is straight from this evening, develops this into a tropical storm quickly Saturday afternoon, crosses over the Florida Keys during that same time frame, and eventually continues to strengthen, moving up the west coast of Florida Saturday afternoon and evening as a strengthening tropical storm just offshore of Fort Myers and the Naples area, and then eventually curves inland towards Tampa Bay and into Pinellas County Sunday morning as, again, a tropical storm. Now, this would probably be about a 60-mile-an-hour tropical storm, and again, this is Sunday morning. We're about to hit Friday, so this isn't that far out. We kind of got to start putting the pedal to the metal here a little bit on getting these warnings out and stuff. But, we move this further ahead into time. Then the GFS slowly, but a little quicker than previous runs, moves this across the Florida Peninsula up near Orlando and exits it back out over the Atlantic up near Savannah overnight Sunday into Monday. So again, landfall Sunday morning, meanders northward through Florida throughout the day Sunday, and then Sunday night exits back into the Atlantic Ocean near Jacksonville and Savannah. So again, impacts would include heavy rainfall, flooding, rough seas, surf, and even a little bit of surge probably with this sort of storm. Now, what happens next is where things get interesting on the GFS. This is the point where steering currents break down. So if I pull this back a little bit, and I probably should have talked about steering currents ahead of time, but I'll go ahead and give you a little sneak peek here. We've got a trough here, we've got this Bermuda high here, and we've got a storm here. So again, everything's kind of circled here, and if we look at the general flow here that would occur in this situation, It's one that wants to pull the storm northward. So that's what happens. Again, this gets pulled up from Cuba, gets shuffled northward, um, and then eventually, it kind of continues on that track. But at the same time, that trough that kind of pulled it out it's out of here. It's got places to be. It's got a vacation in Canada, so it doesn't have time to hang around and completely pull up this tropical system. So then it gets stuck here. And you'll notice the GFS, this is Monday morning. We've got a tropical storm just offshore of Charleston, South Carolina. And then Monday afternoon, you're like, all right, it's still moving. That's good. It might still be getting influenced by that trough throughout the day Monday. And then we get to Tuesday. And then we get to Wednesday. And then we get to Thursday, and we still have a storm at this point strengthening, turning into a likely hurricane at this point, just off the Carolina coastline. And again, it loses track of steering. It kind of gets stuck there. It meanders and eventually works its way into North Carolina as a pretty strong hurricane there. And then just hangs out much like kind of Florence did a little bit for, a couple of days there. Now, I don't say that to tell you that this is going to be Florence Part 2 or that this is going to be like any other storm we've had necessarily, but it's something to pay attention to because we're getting to the point now where, especially in Florida, if we need to do things ahead of the time for this storm, we're kind of running out of time, especially in the Florida Peninsula. You really got tomorrow and Saturday for any kind of prep that you would need. And again, if I back this up, a strong tropical storm is, something to take note of. And I'll show you some models here in a second that suggest this could be a little bit stronger than a strong tropical storm should this stay a little bit further offshore and get a little bit further north. But either way, that's the latest GFS. Something to take seriously. Again, the GFS was the first model that said this is going to get into the Gulf of Mexico. So we're gonna give him a little bit of credentials here as we continue to monitor some of these models. So again, that's the latest GFS, and we'll take a look at the European next. All right, I'm also going to take a quick second to check on chat, make sure I haven't missed anything. Again, sorry I disappeared there for a second. This time it wasn't the internet connection, it was my camera battery that was the problem. So the more you know, I have to find a fix for that to allow these streams to go a little bit longer. But also, if you can see me well and you can hear me good, let me know in chat. I would probably add a little bit of comfort. All right, awesome. We'll keep on trucking. Again, got about 40 or 50 viewers here, so thank you everybody. I appreciate it. Again, if you just joined, let me know where you're watching from and kind of what you're hearing there. I also love to hear what you're hearing from your local TV stations. Thank you, CJ, for letting me know everything's good. But something I love to know is what your local meteorologists are saying. That's a big dream of mine, is to kind of work in a local market sometime, especially if you're watching in Florida or the Tampa Bay area, up through the Big Bend, even down towards Fort Myers. I know Wink News is a big one there, and I follow some of those people on Twitter, and I've seen some posts, but I'd love to know kind of what they're saying. Thank you, Jim. Glad to hear that everything's running fine, no issues. All right, so we'll move ahead. Again, that was the GFS. Let's take a look now at everyone's favorite, the European model, and we'll start this same time Saturday morning. Now, as I showed you earlier, the big difference between the two is kind of how the storm is only 48 hours from now. And again, over Cuba, the Euro shows development slower. It kind of struggles to really define that center of low pressure. It's still broad, and you can even see that on our pressure map here at the surface. Now, we move this ahead into time a little bit, and you'll notice on the European, this is getting into Saturday afternoon and into overnight Saturday. We have way less of a storm than we did on the GFS model, and that's no surprise, as again, they're initializing differently on how this kind of forms off the coast of Cuba. And eventually with the European, again, a little bit further offshore, not getting picked up as quickly by that trough. It's much weaker, still really an open wave, maybe a tropical depression. And then kind of finally works into the Big Bend region of Florida Monday morning. So that'd give a little bit more time, but the impacts would still be ongoing by Sunday in terms of rough seas, flooding concerns, heavy rainfall. A lot of that would be ongoing, through this weekend, no matter what. So that's another point to hit home, and we'll talk about those more specific impacts a little bit later on in the stream. But just know that is something that we're going to kind of want to watch out for here. Now, what happens next on the European? Similar to the GFS, this hooks across Florida a little bit and then gets back over the Atlantic Ocean here sometime Monday or Tuesday, just offshore of Georgia. and kind of begins to become a little bit stronger, hitting tropical storm status just offshore of Savannah and Charleston during our Tuesday and Wednesday. And kind of again just meanders there for multiple days, and again develops even into a stronger tropical storm just offshore of Charleston. And for my folks in Charleston, if any of you are watching, you know that that is not something you want. You don't want a strong storm. You don't want a stalling storm either. In fact, I would argue a storm that is weaker, that stalls out, is probably worse for a place like Charleston and Myrtle Beach than a stronger storm that's kind of quick hitting. And here's why. Again, if you're watching from Charleston, you know how easily it floods. And if we get a storm like this, like both models have shown, that stalls out off the southeast coastline, this could be days of onshore flow that is kind of just relentless. So from Charleston northbound through Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, even into the Outer Banks, again, obviously exact location and strength would be important, but no, nonetheless, we would see, again, multiple days of strong onshore flow that would lead to flooding concerns, storm surge concerns, rip tides, rough seas. Again, it would just be a disruption that would last way too long. And then the European, we move this all the way ahead. This is next Saturday. Finally kind of tries to nudge inland, but is still just hanging out around the South Carolina coastline 10 days from now. So what would be impacting Florida in 3 days could still be in the Carolinas in 10 days in a solution like this. And again, not guaranteed by any means, but I think the storm's going to stall somewhere. That is something the models have been pretty consistent with, is this thing's going to stall out. Now, the big question will be, I think, does it stall over land? Does it stall over the ocean? That is going to play a big role in those impacts again. But that's the latest European model. Again, different than the GFS, and I'll show you another one here. This is our AI European model. And again, this is a new one. And from here on out, I'm going to kind of breeze through these a little bit quicker, just in the hopes of saving some time and getting towards those actual impacts a little bit quicker here. But again, the AI European model, a new model, kind of came with the big AI craze over the past couple years. Here we go. Gets this into the Western Gulf Saturday evening, begins to strengthen it, and gets it a tropical storm status, so a little bit stronger than the actual European, but landfall location and timing is pretty similar. Tropical storm moving into the Big Bend of Florida sometime overnight Sunday into Monday, and then again hooks it over Florida, gets back out over the open waters of the Atlantic just offshore of Georgia and South Carolina Monday and Tuesday. But then the AI European strengthens it much more considerably and then moves it up into Wilmington, a lot more similar to the GFS. So, you know, if we kind of look at all three here, yes, there are differences, obviously, but they're not that different compared to a couple days ago. We're getting a little bit closer here to kind of solving this mystery. So again, that's the AI European model, and I'll even move this further ahead into time, and then slowly it works up through eastern North Carolina, and then would bring even some impacts potentially to the northeast, but that's way too far out to really dive into. Alrighty, awesome. So again, we're getting through some models here. We've got a lot going on here. And I'm gonna also mention here really quickly, if we do get a storm to potentially take a track like this from Florida into the Carolinas, I'll likely be out there chasing it. You know me, I can't pass up a good spinning type of air, whether that's a hurricane or a tornado. So again, that's something to let you all know of, and I'll probably even do some live streaming during the event, in the event if it happens. So that's something to keep note of. But again, those are the big models. That's the GFS, the Euro, and the AI Euro. Not so much of a big one yet that we know of. But yeah, we'll take a look at some more models here as well. We've been going long enough that my tea has gotten cold as well, so that's unfortunate, but that'll be okay. So we'll move this ahead. This is the Canadian model. Again, same general idea as the others. Tropical storm strengthens up the coast of Florida Sunday afternoon here, making landfall there into the Big Bend. So that's multiple models here in a row that show that landfall into the Big Bend. And then the Canadian, here's what's different, and here's what I want you to pay attention to. The Canadian does not get this back over open ocean. It does meander it for a while, but instead just kind of slowly snakes its way up the I-95 corridor from Georgia into South Carolina and into North Carolina early next week, and then gets back over the open ocean and strengthens as it pulls away. So again, this is a very real possibility still. We could just see a weak tropical storm hit Florida and stay weak and just overland for multiple days. That's a very real possibility. The GFS and the European that get this back over open ocean isn't guaranteed or set in stone. And again, if I just very quickly take you back to those spaghetti models, you'll you'll see here again, most of those, kind of don't take this back over the open ocean. So, if anything, I would say right now it's kind of worst case scenario is what the GFS is showing, and not necessarily absolutely what's going to happen. So again, the Canadian is another real possibility. This just meanders over land. Not to say that there wouldn't be impacts, because flooding would be a big concern, and we would still see onshore flow of some sort, and probably even a little bit of an enhanced severe weather risk through coastal areas of the southeast. So again, another model, another possibility. All right, final global model I'm going to show you. Then I'm going to show you the HWRF, which is a hurricane-specific model. It's the first run we have of the HWRF since this has been designated an invest. So again, that'll be something that we look at here in just a second. Also, just want to say thank you again to everyone tuning in. Looks like we're at a high for the stream right now. We've got about 50 people tuning in, so thank you so much. Again, it means a lot, and I appreciate it. All right, so icon model, or the German model. Again, we've got so many models that we don't even really know what to do with ourselves here. But again, it makes it fun to kind of analyze these storms in these setups. So icon model, same idea. They all form this just off the southwest coast of Florida near Fort Myers and the Keys. Sometime Saturday or Sunday, move it up the west coast. Icon, much like the last couple I've shown you, tropical storm into the Big Bend, and then back out over the Atlantic near Savannah. This is as far out as the latest run goes, but again, this is brand new, so we'll show it to you. Again, similar to the GFS and kind of what the European were showing, so maybe a sign of things to come for sure. But again, said it before, say it again, we won't really absolutely know for sure until we get an actual center of circulation to form, and we can get some hurricane hunters in there to kind of analyze this a little bit better. So all right, next thing I'm going to show you is the HWRF. This is a hurricane-specific model, so this is not a model that runs at the normal kind of global scale here. This is one that only specifically is used for, well, hurricanes and tropical systems. So this is the very first run we've gotten of this for this system, and I'm going to start again on Saturday afternoon. And you'll notice here where we're starting out. This is just offshore of Cuba. Again, just to the north here, just off from the Keys of Florida, and is bringing some impacts with it. So again, widespread rainfall, and in a second here, I'm going to show you potential satellite as well. So again, we're gonna double up here, but we'll start with the actual model itself here in terms of pressure. So we get this through the afternoon on Saturday, overnight Saturday into Sunday, a strengthening storm quickly, like the GFS does. It's got that center. It's ready to go. It's ready to get some fuel off of that Gulf of Mexico ocean. And again, a lack of wind shear, lack of dry air. HWRF quickly strengthens this storm into a hurricane Sunday afternoon, just about 100 miles or so off the coast of Tampa Bay, as a strengthening hurricane, and continues that trend, and then landfall early Monday morning right into the Panama City Beach, kind of Destin area here, Florida, as a strong hurricane, borderline major hurricane, I would argue here, with a pressure like that. So again, the other solutions that bring this into the Big Bend as a weaker tropical storm are not completely set in stone. That's not something that we can guarantee. Again, we could very much see a solution like this that is a little bit stronger, has that vortmax at the beginning the second it gets over the ocean, and also is a little bit further offshore and has more time to lift northward before making landfall. And then I will also even show you afterwards, this eventually, again, just meanders here for a while over South Georgia and Alabama. So another model that shows it's stalling out in some way, shape, or form. All right, time for the pretty colors here. This is satellite for this system. And we'll move this ahead. And again, you'll notice it's kind of still a disorganized mess on Saturday afternoon. But once it gets over the Gulf, that quickly changes. Overnight Saturday into Sunday, it takes that shrimp look to it here. Again, you can see kind of the banding here within this potential satellite loop. And actually, let me pick a color you can actually see here. Here we go. You can see the banding here, though, within the storm, indicating that it is strengthening. It's got strong outflow to it. And then eventually, again, moves northward as a strong hurricane. And then, obviously, would die out a little bit over land. So that is that model. All right, so next thing I'm going to show you are our ensembles, and we're going to start here with the European and its ensembles. So this is the latest from the European model, and just kind of watch what happens here. Actually, I'm going to stop it here. So to explain this real quick, ensembles, again, just kind of make up a model and its whole. It's kind of a form of spaghetti models in a way. So it's got its own use. But oftentimes we like to use this instead of just the operational runs, which I just showed you, to kind of forecast where these systems are going to go. Basically, what it does is it puts in a bunch of different values in the atmosphere that we don't completely know, and kind of simulates all those different potentials and sees, how could that affect the outcome here? Should some of our weather balloons be missing data somewhere? And again, it could just add some more oomph here to our forecast. So they all kind of start the same here on the European. Again, we've got that low pressure forming just offshore of Florida, mainly as a weak system to start out. Again, the operational Euro kind of agreed that this storm might take a little bit longer to form, but we start this loop, and here we go. Most of them bring this into Florida, but you'll already notice just a couple days out from now, this would be Monday morning, we've got some disparities here. We've got some that move it quicker, like the GFS did over Florida and then into the Atlantic. We've got some that are moving slower and into the Big Bend. So already seeing disparities here. And then we continue this, and it basically it becomes a mess. All of them just meander around, some kind of some loop back one way, some loop back the other. It's kind of like SpongeBob, if you know the tie in your shoe song, you got to loop-de-loop and pull. That's kind of what the European ensembles are doing here. They're just looping left, looping right once it hits Florida. So, it's a tough forecast. And again, we're about to get into the steering currents in just a second. I'll tell you why it's such a tough forecast, but it just is. And again, I know that's annoying for the public. And it's annoying for me as somebody trying to forecast to just have to say when we're not that far away that we just don't completely know, but we just don't completely know. So again, that's something that is going to make it tough. Now, look at the GFS and its ensembles. I'm going to refresh this because these are brand new, hot off the press from 18Z, and they're still running a little bit here. So we're going to watch this together real time for the first time. All right, so yeah, that gets us about 126 hours out, not completely all the way there, but again, like the European, again, starts us over the Gulf, but again, a little bit closer to land here and also starting a little bit stronger. So the GFS brings this into, closer towards the west coast of Florida. Some of these members bring it right up into Fort Myers there, into Port Charlotte and kind of other areas. Other members bring it up into Tampa a little bit here. So the good news for that is that would lessen time over the open ocean in the Gulf at least. So we would likely experience not as strong of a storm. That is one pro to this. But we continue this ahead, and one con of that is if it does take this quicker path and kind of gets over kind of Fort Myers and then hooks back over Florida quicker, as a lot of these members are indicating here, that's more time over the open ocean of the Atlantic and over the Gulf Stream. So unfortunately, it's kind of a catch-22. You're overland longer in the Gulf and likely Florida gets a stronger storm, or you kind of hook over Florida a little quicker and then you get into the Atlantic and maybe the Carolinas get a stronger storm. So it's going to make it tough here, but either way, we move this ahead at a time and then the stall happens. So steering currents are going to be a tad stronger Saturday, Sunday, but then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday here, you'll notice things kind of stall out in the atmosphere. And again, that's going to make it a little bit more difficult here to forecast the exact location that this is going to go. All right, speaking of steering currents, let's break them down for you. And then after that, we will talk about impacts, and I'll take all your questions and answer them, and then let you all get back to the last couple hours of your first day of August here. So we'll start this Saturday morning like we start all of our models. And most of the models agree with this general idea. Here's the storm, again, somewhere, just north of Cuba or over Cuba or near the Keys, that general area. And what's happening north of there is a couple things. But the most important is this trough right here. I talk about troughs and ridges all the time in my videos. Here's a trough axis. Again, we learned that in fundamentals of meteorology. So again, pretty early on stuff here. But it's important because what happens, again, is the air is going in here and then out of the trough. So what's happening at the surface here over Florida is we're getting a lot of these wind barbs that are trying to kind of follow that trajectory. And this is why I'm kind of leaning towards the GFS a little bit on maybe a quicker landfall. Is again, most of the wind barbs at the surface have a little bit more of a western component, definitely northerly for sure, but it's more of a north-northwest component. So should this storm form here just north of Cuba, this could get pulled up into Fort Myers and Tampa Bay pretty quickly and then back over into the open Atlantic Ocean. Now here's the problem. This is a pretty weak trough, and that trough kind of dies apart pretty quickly here. And again, it's pulling that storm north. There it is over Tampa Bay Sunday morning here on the GFS. But then we get towards Monday, and what's left of that trough is all the way up into Canada. As I mentioned, it's got a vacation in Montreal. It doesn't want anything to do with the eastern United States. But what does is this big ridge out west. And you'll notice how this ridge slowly continues to build in further this way and scoots eastbound a little bit as the storm is trying to escape. And what happens is it gets cut off and it just kind of gets stuck here. Steering currents die down. And that's also why some of the models kind of almost loop it back a little bit here. Again, with isobars like this, you're getting flow like this now. Now, not very strong flow, so it's not moving quickly. But that would try to pick up the storm and maybe even loop it back a little bit here for potentially a couple of days. And again, just kind of parks it there until eventually something kicks it back north. Now, that could be another trough that tries to swing on through later next week. That could be a ridge from the Bermuda High kind of trying to nudge it back inland a little bit. All those are possibilities, but that's why it's such a tough forecast is anytime you have weak steering currents, they can change easily, especially this far out, and it could, move it either way. So that's what's making it tough. But again, the idea is that it's going to stall out somewhere. And because of that, we're going to see impacts in terms of rainfall and flooding. The latest here from the Weather Prediction Center. Again, this isn't just a model run. This is an actual forecast for meteorologists here on the national scale. This is rainfall for just the next 7 days. And look at some of these totals here. Near a foot of rain being forecasted now for portions of the Big Bend here. Kind of near Apalachicola and surrounding areas. Half a foot here along the Florida West Coast from Fort Myers, Port Charlotte, Naples, Tampa Bay. And also higher rainfall totals here up near Savannah, Jacksonville, and Charleston. As again, you can kind of get the general path idea from this. This is kind of the overall forecast rainfall-wise. So again, rain is going to be a big-time concern for these regions, and flooding is also going to be a concern. In fact, I believe somebody commented on my video this morning saying just how much rain Florida has gotten over the past couple of days or the past week or so. And again, that definitely could be exacerbated by all this potential rain from the tropical system. So Scott asking about wind shear in the Eastern Gulf in the next 3 days. It's pretty minimal, Scott, and considering how warm the waters are out there, even if there's a little bit of shear, it's going to take a little bit more than that to kind of put a dent in this thing. But yeah, shear is really limited. Dry air looks to be pretty limited. The biggest thing the storm's going to be fighting probably is just time. Again, if it's only over the Gulf for a day or two, that's going to limit how quickly it can form into something stronger. So that's kind of the good news here. But parameters are they're more than conducive for tropical development. Alrighty here. So one last thing I'm going to show you. This is the GFS model just to kind of give you general impact ideas. And then after that, I'll answer all your questions. So if you want, go ahead, start asking them. I'll run through this and then I will get to answering all of those. And again, if you have a question about a specific community or a specific area, feel free to ask it. I'm sure you're not the only one. So again, go ahead and do that, and I'll start talking about this though. So again, impacts wise, we'll bring this back a little bit. This is Saturday afternoon across Florida. Northern half of Florida still looks relatively dry, all things considered, but you'll notice here come the rain bands from that wave, slowly working in and slowly bringing problems with it. Also, rough seas is going to be a concern really all weekend, probably in the Gulf, especially, but even the Atlantic side, we're going to get some shore-on flow here. That could bring some riptide currents, or rip currents, I should say, and any other problems there that you would normally expect. So Saturday, rain builds into the Florida Peninsula here. Overnight Saturday into Sunday, that rain gets heavy, likely along the west coast, starting from the Keys up through, again, Fort Myers, Tampa Bay, eventually up into the Big Bend probably. And again, that rain could be heavy at times. The winds could be gusting. We could see a little bit of surge there on the right-hand side. So places like Fort Myers, again, Port Charlotte, probably even Tampa, at least depending on where the center goes, again, could see some of those problems. And that continues here as the storm moves over the Florida Peninsula Sunday afternoon and eventually back out over the open ocean of the Atlantic for our Sunday night going into Monday. So again, here you go. We're seeing most of those impacts here in the Florida Peninsula, at least on this model run, during the weekend itself. And then we hit Sunday night into Monday, and then it becomes more of a Carolina concern, and things kind of become a little bit nicer over the Florida Peninsula. And if we move this up a little bit here, you'll notice, actually, no, I'm going to stay on this map for a little bit longer, but overnight Sunday into Monday, again, a strengthening tropical system just offshore of Savannah and onshore flow increasing for Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, even the southern sections of southeastern North Carolina here. Again, seeing that onshore flow up near the Jacksonville area of North Carolina, not Florida there. And again, that continues as the storm just kind of stalls out a little bit here. It hangs out and meanders. Again, onshore flow continuing, probably on and off showers. And again, this is Monday, this is Tuesday, this is Wednesday, this is Thursday. Still just seeing strong onshore flow with a strong system offshore, and then finally tries to move inland, and that's when the rainfall would become a concern. So again, that's not a forecast, but I just want to show you the potential here of what kind of impacts we could be seeing. Now, if the storm is way weaker than this, impacts are going to be on the lesser side. If the storm's inland, impacts are going to be on the lesser side. But either way, no matter what, we feel confident. Very heavy rainfall rates, flooding, rough seas, and probably at least some surge for somebody is going to be something we need to watch out for throughout the next week. Alrighty. I'll go ahead and bring it back to satellite here. Let this spin away a little bit and let me take some questions. Will Virginia get hit? So it's a good question. It's kind of tough to tell. So Virginia, what looked like could be offshore of Virginia really within the next couple of days. Actually, I'm going to change to this map as well just because it's being a little nicer to me. Has changed pretty significantly since the storm is expected to stall now. So it's really hard to know exactly if this storm is going to get up near Virginia. I think at least some sort of onshore flow into the Delmarva could be a problem on down the road. But again, depending on where the storm stalls and how strong it is, really is just going to be really important for that. All right, Gabby's asking, will North Carolina get hit? So North Carolina, I do think there will be impacts in North Carolina. It's a matter of where you live in North Carolina and, how strong the storm is, but especially coastal North Carolina, Wilmington, up through the Outer Banks, absolutely keep an eye on this. Also, the eastern half in general, kind of the I-77, I-85 corridor eastbound. This looks like it could be, impactful for you with at least some rain, maybe less or so back towards the Asheville area and the Boone area. Will travel to Orlando on the morning of the 11th be affected? So that's pretty far out there. I don't want to say no, because again, if the storm stalls and kind of meanders around, it could be there for a while. But the 11th is pretty far out. So, it's a good 10 days. So, Jennifer, I'd just say keep an eye on it. Keep tuning back in. Again, post a video every morning. So, that's a good way to kind of stay up to date. Speaking of that, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. We are trying to get to 10,000 here within the next couple of months. So, we're trying to do that by the end of hurricane season. And you're welcome, Jennifer. So, again, subscribe if you haven't already. Also, like the stream. I never said that at the beginning, so kind of, messed that part up a little bit. But again, definitely do that as well if you haven't. All right, do we have any more questions here? I'm going to take a couple sips of tea, see if any funnel in, and then if not, I will end the stream and let everyone go, because we did go pretty long here. This was a good, almost an hour, so pretty solid stream. Also, I will add, I do apologize that the camera kind of cut off there in the middle of recording this. So again, I'll have to work on that. I think I should probably just charge the batteries a little bit more. But weirdly enough, these batteries get burnt even though it is plugged in. So. Alrighty, I guess one thing we can do really quickly just before we end it, let's see if the NHC has updated this because it is just about 8 o'clock. Nope, still running off a 2 p.m. data, so that's still the newest I got for you. But that will be updated in about 20 minutes. So if you want the latest from them, you can check back to nhc.noaa.gov in about 20 minutes. But with all of that said, I think those are all the questions. Again, we talked about a lot here and discussed a lot. Excuse me. And also, again, just want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in. I'll probably do this again tomorrow evening. This is going to be, excuse me, got the hiccups all of a sudden. It's going to be a trend probably to keep doing these live streams during the evening hours, especially going into this weekend as the storm really kind of bears down on some people, or what could, again, still be an open wave. We don't really know. But, yeah, so I appreciate everybody. Again, thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. But y'all have a wonderful rest of your first day of August. Don't forget to tune back in tomorrow morning for a video update, and I will let you know more then on future plans for future streams. But again, have a great one. See y'all next time.